The reason that creators get sick, they crash, is because they live in a world of output. And if they're not getting enough input, then that asymmetry is what causes a problem. Sometimes it can end up being, over time, something more nefarious.
How could I have prevented that? How do you monitor for this before that crash happened? Welcome back to another episode of the Creator Method Podcast. Okay, Daniel, this episode I literally am the most excited about from any episode I've ever done.
Thank you.
I am going to jump into your intro, and then we're going to get into all of it, okay?
Let's
Because
do it.
I want to set the stage.
Yeah.
Because I want people to understand what it is that we're doing here. So today I am sitting with someone whose expertise is unmatched. Dr. Daniel Yadegar is a triple board certified physician who trained at Harvard and Weill Cornell. He is a celebrated cardiologist and former associate director of Lenox Hill's Cardiac Care Unit. As well as being a leader in preventative and longevity medicine, he combines the rigor of advanced medical training with a whole person philosophy that prioritizes sleep, nutrition, mindset, movement, and daily habits just as much as diagnostics. He helped build one of the leading integrative practices in Palm Beach before becoming chief medical officer at Atria. And he is deeply involved in the biotech and longevity space as a co-founder, investor, and board member, always searching for new breakthroughs that help people live stronger and healthier for longer. Beyond all of that, Daniel is a proud single father of 2 children through IVF and surrogacy. He is a brilliant human being who I am grateful to call a friend and have this groundbreaking conversation with. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Anytime I get to spend with you, for me, is just amazing.
You are the best. You know what? I so enjoy the time that you and I have spent together and that we continue to spend together. We met in France, of all places. We were there celebrating a friend's birthday, and I was there with Valeria, and we just had such an amazing time. And you and I and Valeria, we connected so well, and I was just so excited to see you again in Miami. And you came with your kids to my house, to our house, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, that you run into people in your lives where it's an instant connection, and meeting you and Valeria and spending time with your family has just been really special.
Thank you. Beyond, obviously the personal connection that we instantly had, when you talk to me about health and longevity, and you were so kind that you right away said, okay, Gary, tell me about your family history. And I told you about my family health history, and you said, okay, we have to do this and this and this and this. And just your attention to detail and what really intrigues me, I was going to say intrigued, but it continues to intrigue me, is just not only the level of knowledge that I've never seen before, right? I've literally never seen anybody with a level of knowledge when it comes to the health sciences as you do, but just your passion for it and your ability to communicate it to myself, who was, the furthest thing from, somebody who's knowledgeable in this field. And it truly, intrigues me. I want you to tell me more about yourself, because I feel that the introduction that I made for you is just such a drop in the bucket. Can you tell me more about yourself, personal or professional, whatever you'd like to share with myself and our listeners?
Of course. So I was born originally in Iran. My family is Jewish. We fled during the revolution and kind of lived internationally. We moved to the UK. We were refugees.
Yes.
And then from the UK, we went to the US and to the Dominican Republic. I grew up there as a small kid.
You grew up in the Dominican?
In the 1980s. Both of my
wow.
sisters were born there. My dad went to med school in the Dominican Republic. And at an early age, I saw, sick children, disease in the third world. And I think at an early age, it was a calling to, how can you help try to make an impact? And I think it was very formative for me, having seen my dad go to medical school in a third world country.
Wow.
Then we moved to the US.
Sorry, your dad practiced medicine there?
My dad trained there. He went to medical school there, graduated from a Dominican medical school.
And so you saw kind of, I guess, underprivileged children?
Underprivileged, disenfranchised, impoverished, a lot of, disease and, infectious disease and malnutrition and all that sort of stuff at a really early age. And that really imprinted me from an early age, and I come from a family of doctors. So my grandparents were doctors, my dad was a doctor, uncles are doctors. So science, medicine, and outreach has always been sort of in my DNA. Mm-hmm. I was that kid in high school who volunteered at the hospitals and couldn't wait to go to medical school, and went to college, was pre-med. I ran the pre-med society at Harvard. I was very passionate about everything having to do with science and community and really making an impact. So that's me as an early duckling. Then I went the very traditional path. I went to med school in New York City, did my internal medicine residency and then cardiology fellowship. And then after I did that, my life sort of went a really different direction. I still practice clinical medicine, which I absolutely love, but I'm in touch with sort of the future of medicine, as well as sort of the connection between science and spirituality. So I live between, I say molecules to metaphysics in that realm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to, we're not going to talk about who some of your patients are. We're not going to talk about that, but I do want to, like, you do have patients who, when I kind of describe the demands on content creators and on creators in general, you have several high profile patients.
Right.
So you're very familiar
Yes.
with what I'm talking about and this demand that are put on people in this content creation field.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I really want to dive deep into what the solutions are, because I really want to understand for myself, for Valeria, for the members of our community, and just people at large, content creators at large, how to continuously balance this and how to optimize themselves for longevity. Because I have like so many examples of when Valeria was just at the brink of collapse.
Yes.
And we had to bring her back. And it's actually interesting because I was just talking about this. We shot, I was mentioning before we turned the camera on, we shot with Camila, Coella, and Ikaro, her husband. That was the first time he'd actually been on camera.
Is that right?
Yeah, and he told me, we were all, the four of us were talking, and he told me a story about how in 2019 they were at this like peak of her career, and there were so many things happening, and things were going great, and all of the metrics were doing what they needed to be doing, and they were at dinner, at the end of a very long day with another long day ahead of them, and she just broke down and said, "I quit." And that was just such a moment for me where I was just like, I so understand that, because I've had that with Valeria. And then I, as both her business partner and her husband, get super anxious because, number one, I'm anxious about you and your health, but then I also have to be simultaneously concerned about like our business and our livelihood.
Yes.
Right? So we're going to talk about all that. I want to, before we get into that conversation, I want to talk about your kind of, what you're going to be doing in social media. Just briefly, I want to touch upon that. There is a ocean of, lack of a better word, bullshit when it comes to health, when it comes to longevity, by completely unqualified people. And so my concern with this is that whether you're a content creator or just a human being in general, I know that you are the real deal. Like I know with your credentials and my relationship with you, but there are so many people out there that are not. There are so many people making these outrageous claims in terms of health. And I believe that with you, your advantage and your differentiator, even more than your credentials, like your credentials are clearly there, your unique ability to communicate this information from the conversations I've had with you, that really is your differentiator. And so that's kind of my vision. My vision is that you are kind of the truth and comfort in a world of this complete chaos and all this bullshit being thrown at people. So, that is your true differentiator, is that ability to communicate in such a calm and convincing way. So I just wanted to point that out to you.
Thank you.
As more of like a long-term strategy. What general recommendation do you have dealing with the high-profile clients that you do for somebody who is literally always on, walking from one podcast shoot to creating content to an interview? How do you help somebody who always has to be on, mentally and physically?
It's such a good question, and those demands are real, and those demands long-term can have real biological impact on people, in terms of sleep, in terms of blood pressure. Chronic stress, we know, is a big contributor to long-term disease, inflammation, etc. So we know that self-care is really important. I think the idea of being on 24/7 is just impossible.
It is impossible.
So I think the first thing is just to be aware of our language. Like, we'll say to ourselves, I need to be on all the time. But you can build in little programming, mini programming within the day that gives yourself small signals of self-care, whether that's a 10-minute timeout where you sort of just put on classical music or meditate, going for a walk, talking to a friend, and really prioritizing. Because if you're a content creator, I would imagine that the longevity of your career is important. And if we're investing in your career, just let's look at an ROI of career.
Yeah.
You have to invest in self-care.
Yeah.
You know, if your health is not good and you're having mental health issues or physical issues or sleep issues, sure, you might be great for a couple of years, but if you burn out, what good is that? So having the awareness and making the connection of I am my own most important investment. And in order for me to have that kind of resonance with my audience, I need to fill up my cup. And what does that mean? Good nutrition, surround yourself with good people, prioritize sleep and exercise. And then you don't have to do all of them perfectly every day. It's impossible. Even that's stressful. Like just do good enough, you know, and make sure that you have the awareness that investment is important for you.
You've literally hit like everything that I talk about. It's like we're so on the same wavelength here. One of the things that I tell creators, and maybe I'm a little crude about it, is I say, like, if you compare yourself to a business, because you are a business, you're essentially like, you are the asset, and essentially you are the product. And if you look at any other business in the world, they have the owners of that business allocate time, money, various resources to product development.
Yes.
So why aren't you doing product development?
100%.
That's typically the first thing that they do. And you're involved in various product companies, and you're always developing product. Yes. But when the product is a human being, that human being seems to think that they're being selfless by not filling their cup, to your point. So I'm always advising them, literally, you have to schedule it in your day.
Yeah, there's a saying, sometimes you have to slow down to speed up.
No,
slow
absolutely.
down to speed up.
Yeah. Absolutely. When you consider this kind of thesis of mine that the creator, you know, is the product, how do you look at like that ROI? So there's the obvious ROI of health and all the benefits, and the why. Like for me, the why is to be a good example for my kids. For me, the why is to spare my children the agony of dealing with a father who's sick when I get into my 70s, 80s, and 90s. But when we really you talked about the long term for creators, like I'm always telling creators, let's say when they're in their 20s and 30s and beyond, it's like map to the next 20 or 30 years. So what do you believe is the ROI in that type of product development? What can they expect to gain?
There's so much
professionally.
I'm going to go professionally and personally, because you know they're content creators, but they're also human beings, and it's good to be able to enjoy your craft. No one looks on their deathbed saying, "Oh my gosh, I wish I would have created 10,000 more posts."
Right.
You know, you want to have harmony in your life. I think harmony is really important. Balance is important. Professionally, I think we talked about the ability to be creative. Sometimes when you slow down and take time for yourself, the product that you put out there is so much more impressive and, you know, has better connective tissue with the audience.
Absolutely.
Because you've allowed yourself to rest. My most creative moments come when I'm in the shower, when I'm calm, when I'm rested, you know, and, you know, sometimes all you need is a small little respite to make a quantum leap. It's a small little, you know, resting. If you're constantly going, your adrenals are going, high cortisol, you're not sleeping, you're wired and tired, you're drinking, you know, downing the caffeine just to stay awake and produce content, you know, it can end up becoming monotonous after a while.
Yeah, you know what, with Valeria, she will sometimes come to me and she'll say, I'm on autopilot. And it can last for weeks. She's like, I'm on autopilot. Like, I know I have to get it done. And there were times when, you know, when we talk about kind of burnout for creators, not for anybody, but we're talking about creators, what would happen to Valeria, especially like earlier on? She's been much better in the last few years, but she didn't pay attention to the markers, to the signals, and she would just crash mentally, physically, emotionally. Our family would suffer, our relationship would suffer. And she pushed herself past the point where she didn't know what to do anymore. Like, she didn't know how to fix it. And then she had to figure out how to fix it in that state. And there were times when both her and I felt she's not coming back, right? And now the improvement that I wanted to get your take on this, the improvement that I'm now seeing in her is she's identified those markers. And I've done it too. I'm much better too. Before I crash, I see it. She's been able to identify it where she gets ahead of it early, and she starts increasing the amount of effort and time she puts into that, to her self-care, to get her to the point where she doesn't hit that.
And that's where the self-awareness, like self-awareness is so important. We live in this world where it's, you know, autopilot. Yeah. So that higher self, your higher self who's looking at your ego mind is, you know, you're not connected to it. And when you take the time to, really listen to your higher self and have that awareness, that's when you can actually take steps to introduce these things that have, self-care involved. It's very hard to introduce self-care if you're not aware that you're lacking it.
But how do you know? So when Valeria, I use Valeria as an example because out of all the creators, she's the one I'm closest to, but she didn't know what those markers were until she had to do like a retrospectively say, okay, this is what happened. Once she got past that terrible period, she then, she stopped and she's like, okay, what happened? And she had to try to remember what were the things. And then she had to kind of document that for herself and say, okay, when this list of things happens again, this is then what I need. Like I need to, here's my question to you. Sorry, here's my question to you. My question to you is, with Valeria, because we didn't have the experience, and quite frankly, because we didn't know people like yourself to tell us about this, and now people who are watching this are going to get the benefit of this. How could I have prevented that? How can somebody who doesn't know what those markers are, like how do you monitor for this before that crash happens?
I think before a crash happens, generally speaking, you feel dysregulated. You might have, it manifests differently for different people. So I can't give like universal markers, but your sleep might be disrupted. Your mood is disrupted. You might be quicker to react to things. You might be more anxious or dreading things. In general, people know when they're dysregulated, when their system is sort of out of balance. And it's a quick check-in to your body. Like, am I spending enough time making sure that I'm getting good restorative sleep? Am I making time for physical movement and exercise? Am I making time for human connection outside of work and having a community? All those things are markers of real longevity. They've done studies on longevity. People who live in isolation don't do as well as people who are connected.
The blue zones, right?
The blue zones are part of that. So I think, the word I like is dysregulated. Am I feeling dysregulated, whatever that looks like? Am I drinking, for instance, I'm not sleeping well and then I'm drinking, 5 cups of coffee to stay awake. Sure. Those are usually things where your body's, trying to get through. So markers of dysregulation, your wake-sleep cycle's off, you're waking up in the middle of the night, not sleeping well. You might be a little bit short with your significant other, your business partners. Your appetite either increases or decreases. Those sort of things are pretty good markers of that before the crash comes.
That's Again, I think to your point, like watching out for those things, it's absolutely crucial. And then obviously the action that is taken is pulling back, getting more rest, monitoring. Yes. I guess what are the important things that contribute to? So if I may, sleep. For sure. I underestimated sleep, and I have a story afterwards I'll share about
sleep. Sleep is one of my favorite topics.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to talk about it in a second. So one is sleep, diet, movement, like exercise. So besides nutrition and activity, physical activity, and sleep, is there more? I would say
mindfulness. Mindfulness.
What do you mean?
Like a quiet mind. If your mind is like you got the monkey chatter, and all you have is thoughts and thoughts and thoughts, and you don't really bring your brain to that theta level, a lot of creativity comes when your mind's quiet. I think there's a lot of value to quiet mind, especially for creators. Like, how can you get just even 10 minutes of a quiet mind every day? That can be through meditation. It could be taking a walk through nature. It could be listening to music. Some people get that meditative with, I play padel, like playing sports. There's different ways to get there, but I think a quiet mind is very underestimated, and just getting to a place where you can sort of just drop in and be at home with yourself and not have to have so much output to the outside world. The reason that creators get sick, they crash, is because they live in a world of output. And if they're not getting enough input, then that asymmetry of input to output is what causes a problem. And that can start off as a crash. It can end up being a migraine. It can end up being lower back pain, or sometimes it can end up being, over time, something more nefarious.
What is the correct ratio? Because I'll tell you why I ask. I want to provide some context. Because there's so much guilt associated with taking care of oneself as a creator. Because creators, again, they're building a business around them. They are the quintessential product. But they also treat themselves like the type A executive who can just work right through it, power through it 14-hour days, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, because they're working towards this greater goal. If we advise high performers in general, creators, executives, whoever it may be, if we advise them to spend time on mindfulness, let's just go with mindfulness for a second, then we're going to get into sleep and activity and stuff. But just on mindfulness alone, for me, I ride motorcycles, as you know.
Yeah.
So, and every Sunday, everybody knows 6 a.m. I'm out of the house. Valeria just assumes I'm not coming back until like 4 or 5 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And so I'm literally on that bike for 5 to 10 hours, like at a time, and I'm getting that in. But what is the correct ratio? Like, so if you're a creator and you're working and you're doing your, 6 days a week, and you have all of these things that you're balancing in life, your kids, everything, your relationship, how many, whatever that mindfulness activity. I mean, for me, I probably over-index at this point with my 10 hours a week. But what is the correct ratio?
And I'm a mathematical person. I love math.
Yes, I know.
And I wish I could give you a formula. I think for everyone, it's going to be a little bit different, but it's enough so you don't feel that dysregulated.
But I want a number. I want to challenge you on this, because I'll tell you why I want a number, because we can't leave it open. And the reason we can't leave it open is because creators, one of the elements of being a modern day content creator is that we as creators get instant feedback, because the data is in real time. It's like a stock market, it's like the stock market ticker. We see the data in real time. And so by seeing the data in real time, we need to understand, like, what is an acceptable amount of time? Like, what is, like, if I'm working 8-hour days as a creator, right? So my output will dictate my ability to meet payroll, to meet all of the demands, to meet like my personal life, my kids, everything. If I'm working 8-hour days, 6 days a week, or let's call it 10-hour days, 5 days a week, which is probably a little more realistic. What can I, within those 10 hours, not outside of those 10 hours a day, so not outside of those 50 hours, because I believe that the mindfulness is part of product development and product evolution, then what is an acceptable out of, like, give me a time that honestly, I can tell them to do guilt-free.
Even if it comes to, like, let's say mindfulness and meditation, let's just leave it at that. Let's just pick that one topic.
Sure.
Even the thing is, if I pick a really big number, you sort of want to do baby steps and get it started.
Yeah.
Even 10 to 20 minutes a day of just not doing anything and being still and getting to quiet minds and meditating, or doing something that's, gets you away from all that output and from the technology and from the bright lights and from, having to think and figure things out. That's a good way to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what can it, because I'm specifically asking because I want to help creators take away the guilt, because they feel if they're sitting around meditating and in their minds they have a bunch of other things that they're neglecting, they have guilt. So the first thing,
we can't take away the guilt. The guilt comes away when you realize and connect, and hopefully by listening to us, that self-care is important. You can't do the self-care for someone else. We can be the advocates and the mouthpieces and speak into the microphones and yell and say, you've got to do this. But at the end of the day, we can't take the guilt away. The guilt goes away when you realize that you're the priority. Yes. And in order to have the longevity that you're looking for, to be balanced as a husband, as a sister, as a brother, as a son, as a person in the community, and even professionally to have that longevity, once you make that connection, that self-care is directly correlated to those things, then these actions are going to come easier to you. Dan and Gary can talk about it until kingdom comes. But if you don't make that connection in your synapses that this needs to happen for these reasons, then even giving you a formula is not going to really work, because they're not going to walk away with it.
It's accountability. They have to be accountable for themselves.
Accountable and value themselves.
Yeah.
Self-value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Self-value.
Well, that spills into a whole other topic, which we may or may not cover on this, but like on this episode, but that all comes down to imposter syndrome, because it's such a vicious circle with creators, because they have this imposter syndrome, thinking that they're not qualified enough, they're not talented enough, they're not pretty enough, they're not skinny enough, they're not whatever all of these things are.
Right.
And then that then feeds into then feeling guilty, because I in their minds it's like they lack on all of these things, and who are they to show up and try to create these communities online, and then that makes them feel guilty about. It's like a chicken and egg thing. Then they feel guilty about not taking care of themselves from a meditation perspective, or that daily disconnect. And then because of that daily disconnect, it feeds this other negativity. That negativity keeps making them feel guilty, and it compounds, and it's this vicious circle. And I think it's important, rather than us concentrating on what the solution is, because it sounds to me like the solution is more of an evolutionary personal journey.
Yes.
It's at least you and I are like identifying this problem.
We're identifying, and I think, again, the awareness is step one.
Yes.
If you're walking away from this conversation saying, okay, I can relate to what they're talking about, I get it, I'm maybe not even ready to put the plan into action, the first step is just an awareness of something that might need to happen in order to improve your life, both professionally and personally.
Absolutely.
The awareness is the first step of what's missing. Am I putting enough time, even a small amount of time, to prioritize myself? And how can I do it a little bit better? We're not expecting anyone to like completely change their lives, like upside down, you know? So like talking about, oh, well, you've got to do 45 minutes of exercise and you've got to get this much sleep. And then it becomes a stress, it becomes a chore. So I think it's just the awareness of, okay, what small micro steps can I take to improve my life on a daily basis?
Right.
And that's the beauty of it, is that you don't have to figure it out all at once. But the first step is to know that something might need to change.
You know, one of the things I really love about you and I admire is when you talk, I can see that you are the result of what you're advising people to do. Like your calmness, it comes across in such a way, like it makes people, I feel, hang on your every word because of your ability to calmly. And I want to kind of make that correlation that as a content creator, if you practice what you preach, so content creators, if they can get to this point where they can convey their value, their message, what it is that they want to talk about in a similar manner and from the same calm place that you do it from, I believe that that's what is going to help fuel their careers indefinitely. So I'm again trying to give them more like power to do this. I want to switch gears and I want to talk about sleep.
Sleep, super important.
So I had an interesting story that happened to me. I completely underestimated it.
Yeah.
And for literally years, I felt fatigued. I was so tired all the time. And I was telling myself, oh, it's because, honestly, I thought I was just getting old. And I thought to myself, that's it. This is the norm.
Yeah.
I'm in my 50s.
Right.
And I'm tired all the time, and it doesn't matter what I do. And I contacted my doctor, and I said, listen, it's getting ridiculous. Like, I'm tired all day long.
Right.
Like, what is going on? He's like, how's your sleep? And I said, it's okay. And he goes, what do you mean, what's okay? And I said, I don't know, like I sleep like 5 hours a night. And he said, no, that's unacceptable. And so he said, try doing this tonight. He said to me, don't look at a screen for 90 minutes before you go to bed.
Right.
And my response to him was, what the hell am I supposed to do for an hour and a half before I go to bed? He's like, figure it out. So I went for a motorcycle ride at night. Then I came home. I went for like half an hour. And then I came home and I talked to my kids for an hour. We just talked about their day, which was nice. And then I went to bed. Daniel, the next day, I honestly felt like I was Superman. It was it wasn't like this progressive change over time. It was one night of sleep that started with 90 minutes of no screens before I went to bed, created just the energy and the clarity. Was this in my head? Is this psychosomatic?
No, I think that definitely makes a difference. Like blue light filters and being away from your phones. Yeah, the brain wants to be able to unwind and then go into deeper sleep. So that's, for sure true.
Tell me more about the science of this. Tell me more about what is it about, and this is especially important for creators because creators spend so much of their time before bed scrolling for entertainment, quite frankly, scrolling to get inspiration, scrolling for the sake of scrolling, because we as creators feel that it's part of our job. It's part of our, so we allow ourselves more time on social media and looking at screens, especially before bed, because the kids are all asleep and we have the time
it's
now.
Exactly.
It's an excuse
it's
we make for
protected
ourselves.
time, yeah.
It's your time to do that. You're going to laugh. I started doing Legos.
Okay.
Yeah, so I really got into Legos because there's no screen and that's it's fun and that helps me with my sleep too. Talk to me about the science. What is it about omitting 90 minutes of screen time that allows the brain to then enter some kind of this miraculous state that I experienced where the next day I slept literally 8 hours. The thing is, I just wanted to say, the thing is that when I go to sleep, even if I go to sleep early, let's say I go to sleep at like 9:30, but I've been on my phone the whole time up until that point, no matter what happens, I'm waking up at 4 a.m. That night that I did that, I went to sleep at 10 and I woke up at 8. I slept for 10 hours. What's the science behind what happened to me?
There's a lot of things that go into sleep. I can do a whole 10 hours on sleep. I'm obsessed with sleep, and I think it's a frontier that we don't talk nearly enough about. To answer your question specifically, the brain responds to stimulus. So if you're constantly alert, your body's responding to what's in front of you. It has a hard time dropping into deeper levels of sleep. You want to try to get to REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep.
Yes.
And really in stages 3 and 4 of sleep is when, for instance, growth hormone gets made. And we know growth hormone's like the master anti-aging hormone. So if you're not sleeping well, you're not really getting those goodies, like those good hormones that your body responds to that makes you feel vital and energetic and build muscle and etc. So sleep is incredibly important. I would sort of even advocate just have a blue light filter on your phone during the daytime.
But it makes me feel guilty. Sorry, the 90 minutes, so then Valeria bought me one of these blue light filters, right? And I put it on because it's just, after that night, as much as I wanted to, it's hard for me to not be on the phone 90 minutes before bed. If I use that blue light filter with those funny looking glasses before I go to bed for 90 minutes on my phone, does that negate the negative of the phone, or is it as good as not being on the phone?
I don't know if it's as good, but it's definitely incrementally better. So I think putting solutions that are realistic, like taking a creator who's, constantly looking for inspiration and say, hey, for the rest of your life, you can't look at your phone for 90 minutes before going to bed, seems unachievable. So let's try to create some strategies that are reasonable. I think a blue light filter would be good. Another thing that's amazing, it's really cool, they've done studies on this. If you take a hot shower and then go into a cool, dark room, the drop in core body temperature causes your pineal gland in your brain to secrete melatonin, and you sleep better.
Oh, wow.
So even the habit of doing a hot shower at nighttime and then going in, once you've toweled off, going into a dark, colder room, once you drop your core body temperature, you produce more melatonin. So even something like that can really improve your sleep quality. Also, you want to have good sleep hygiene. So if you're scrolling, don't do it in bed. Do it on the couch.
Okay.
The bed is only for two things. The bed is for sleeping and for sex, and that's it. Nothing else. You shouldn't be watching TV in bed, because once your body...
depending how adventurous you are. I mean, sex can happen in other places.
It can happen in the couch for sure, but I'm talking about the reverse of it. In terms of scrolling, you don't want to do any of your scrolling in bed, because your body starts associating bed with being alert.
Yes.
So let's create the association that bed... So if you're doing the 90 minutes of scrolling, okay, 2 suggestions. Don't do it in bed. Put a blue light filter on, and let's think about taking a hot shower at nighttime.
If we want to go extreme on that, how about cold plunging? What if I do cold plunging before bed? Is that too extreme?
I don't think that's too extreme. And you can experiment and see if that helps. There's other things that contribute also. We talked about what tired and wired. People metabolize, break down. Metabolize just means break down caffeine differently.
Sure.
Some people, it takes over 10 hours for the caffeine to break down. So if you're having a cappuccino at 2 o'clock because you didn't sleep well, then you have this ongoing cycle of not sleeping well, drinking more caffeine, not sleeping well. So one of the things is sort of cutting off caffeine at a certain hour, because the caffeine you take at 2 p.m. may still be in your body when you're going to bed.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to think about, right?
But there are different people I know that they can have caffeine at before bed
Yes.
and knock out, and they're completely fine. And there are other people, if they have it past noon, they can't.
And we
sleep.
can actually look at people's genetics, do genomics, and see if they're fast metabolizers of caffeine or slow metabolizers of caffeine. But the point is that there's going to be some people out there who are going to drink caffeine at 2 and it's going to be in their body at nighttime.
You have me doing some tests. Are we going to test for that as well?
We're going to be testing we're going to be doing a genomics test on you.
So you'll be able to tell me about my
whether
caffeine.
you're fast or slow.
So you'll be able to say to me, Gary, no more caffeine after this point.
After this point, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I look forward to that, because it is a bit of an addiction. I want to drop in some questions from creators.
Okay.
Now, these aren't specific questions. These are questions that I have kind of accrued throughout my career working with creators. And so I'm going to drop in some random ones. So here's the first one. I keep going through these waves where I'm super motivated for a week, and then suddenly I hit a wall and disappear for days. What are a few simple physical or mental habits to stay consistent? This one's interesting because I really want to talk with you about creating that bridge between the spiritual, the creative, and the physical, and all the things. So what are some of the physical or mental habits in order to stay motivated as a creator?
I know the first thing that came up for me, and Gary, I'm sort of curious to hear what you think. I think that's part of the human condition. You can't always have the same level of output all the time.
Absolutely.
So I think it's okay. Meet yourself with grace and say, okay, right now I'm not able to produce, and that's okay. I think once the judgment comes in and you start beating yourself up for not being able to produce when at your height, then that gets you to be stuck. And the way to unstuck is to be kind to yourself, have some grace, and say, listen, I'm a human being. Right now I might need a break. Maybe my brain is not producing the way that I wanted to, but that's okay. And remind yourself that's okay. Maybe that's a great time maybe that's one of your markers. maybe that's one of your markers that I need to take a break.
So I'll tell you, yes. So I agree with you on all points. It sounds like I'm talking to myself when I'm advising people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. The one thing I will say is that there is a pressure on creators to be consistent in terms of their content output, meaning they've decided I'm going to put out 1 or 2 pieces of content every single day. And this fear happens when it's like, I feel off, and therefore for 3 days, no content has gone up. And then they feel, you know what it's like? I'll give you the analogy. When people are trying to lose body fat, for myself, when I try to lose body fat and I'm good for 4 or 5 days, and then something happens and I'll have a slice of pizza because my kids ordered pizza and I couldn't resist, then I feel like I failed, and then it snowballs, and then I'll have a donut, and then 4 days go by, and I'm like, that's it. And then it's so hard for me to get back to it. It's kind of similar with inconsistency in content creation. I wanted to frame that for you because I agree with you. You have to give yourself grace.
So be consistent 90% of the time,
and that's
give yourself percentage that seems reasonable. And then you're also human. We're not robots.
Yeah.
It's okay. And then those are good opportunities to maybe repurpose content.
Absolutely.
There's different ways to go around it. But first and foremost, be kind to yourself.
I agree with you. What I tell people is that as much as it's more than acceptable to give yourself grace on the days that you don't feel inspired or you're distracted by life.
Yes.
Things happen. Things happen. As long as you identify the days when you're feeling great. Yes. You're identifying the days when you feel like the content is just flowing
out of you,
and bank it
and capture that.
So to me, it's always like, if I have a criteria,
yes,
and if I have a quota for myself, as this is the volume of content that I want to be producing on a regular basis, I try to produce on the days that I feel great. I try to produce more so that I know those inevitably those down days are going to come, and so that's how I do it. But I think to your point, the first thing is to be accepting
and kind, and say, okay, this is where I'm at right now. Approach it with acceptance, maybe curiosity, and hopefully not too much judgment.
Right.
That's when we get stuck.
I want people to understand the consequences of not regulating yourself. Right. I want to maybe scare people a little bit about what's going to happen.
Let's scare them.
So let's scare them. What are the consequences? So you were a creator. You're just like, I don't give a shit about what Daniel and Gary are saying. I'm going hard all the time.
I mean, the one thing that I want to say is sometimes when you're a young creator, you can get away with things a little bit more. But as you get older, it does start, having greater impact. There's this thing called oxidative stress.
Tell me.
Our body's constantly using ATP, creating byproducts from the cells. And if you're continually running and your body's running, you start accumulating things that you don't want to accumulate in your body. There's stress, there's inflammation, and that can have an impact on your body, over time. Mm-hmm. So, the continuous output without breaks is just not good for you. I mean, I think everyone can intuitively tell you that. I can tell you that biologically, for your heart, for your brain, for your different systems, that's just going to be overtaxing, and that your cells are just going to work in overtime.
I want to hit them a little bit where it hurts.
Okay.
I really want to scare people. I want to hit them. And the unfortunate reality is that we live in a very vain world, as you and I both know.
Well, then it can age you and you won't look good on camera.
Thank you.
No,
this is what I need to hear from you.
But it's true. Like the same way with that cigarette smoking is a stressor and ages people. Yeah. Stress does the same thing. It does the same thing. So if you're not interested in your heart and your brain, and at least your physical appearance is where we're going to be hitting you hard, it's going to affect your physical for sure.
Yes. I mean, how about okay? I want to go even deeper. I really want to put this fear into them. How about body fat retention?
Yeah, for sure. If your cortisol levels are high, you're gonna gain weight or have a hard time losing weight. Yeah. You're gonna retain that fat, both body fat and the visceral fat, the fat that surrounds the organs. It's gonna be harder to get rid of that. Yeah, for sure.
What's your plan? You are when I hear about all the things that you're involved in, my head spins. As much as I think I'm busy, lately since meeting you, I've told myself I'm nowhere near as busy as Dr. Daniel. Because you have so much. You have 2 little kids now. Yes. You're a single dad.
I'm a single dad.
You're a single dad.
Yes.
And how do you plan to balance this with all of your work?
Carefully.
Yeah.
Strategically over time. I think it's important. Something that I can build on. Me and Matt are working on coming down with a calendar and being consistent with it. And if I can't have output that week, then I'll be kind to myself.
What is your why? I want to know why you're doing this.
So there's a couple of different ways I can answer that. In the short term, there's so much content being put out there, and there's so much inconsistency, and the inconsistency creates health anxiety. So there's a lot of people sitting out there with anxiety about their health, their wellness. Longevity is becoming a really big topic, but people don't really have the resources to really think about how can I make good decisions for myself, even though they can be little small decisions that can really change the trajectory of their lives. So I think to be able to be involved with that would bring me a lot of joy to be able to make that impact. I also make decisions based on this thought experiment that I do, which is I'm an old man looking back at my life. What do I want that life to look like? And that helps me really think about be intentional. So I remember there was a point in my life where I was thinking about having my kids, and I did this thought experiment, and I thought, if I could have an extra year with my kids, what would I give to have that extra year? And the answer was everything. So I was like, if that's the case, then I shouldn't wait. I should have them now. And that was when I decided to have my kids, because I realized that whether it was at the beginning of my life or at the end of my life, if I can have that time, I wanted it. So I try to make decisions based through that lens of being the old man looking back and thinking how would I want my life to look like? And I know what the answers to that are.
How does this pertain to content? How does this, I want to.
So yeah, understand. For me, it's looking back, making an impact, whether it's, I do biotech investing, whether it's through the signs I invest in or through the spoken word. I want that impact to be there with health and wellness for people who are out there. And however many people I can reach, that's going to be meaningful to me.
You have my brain reeling now and thinking about all the things that come across my mind. Next creator question. When I film myself all the time, I start feeling weirdly insecure, even though I didn't used to be. Is there anything I can do with my daily routine or mindset so I don't burn out from constantly seeing myself on camera? Do you have this, by the way, when you see yourself? Because you've already started. Do you have any anxiety when you see yourself afterwards on camera or being on camera?
I mean, I think as human beings, we're our worst critics. You know, we all think we look goofy or, maybe asymmetric, or this looks like this. This goes back to the whole self-care and self-love and the importance of putting that center and connecting to that and working towards that. And, it's all part of the self-care. Part of the self-care is looking at that person and be like, you're amazing. You're a rock star. You're great. You're beautiful. And really connecting to that. And I think there's a lot of health resonance that'll come from that. And it might take practice. You might fake it to make it in the beginning. But if you realize that that's important and that you deserve it and that you're worthy of it, I think that's where it all starts. Yeah. And I do think that a lot of suffering comes from the lack of self-love. A lot of preventable suffering. Listen, if you walk across the street and get hit by a car, that's not preventable. But a lot of what can be prevented and can be modified originates from a lack of self-care and self-love. Self-care
is an action, to my understanding.
Yes.
That's taken me a lot of time to develop. Like the habits that I have now, the daily habits, sometimes I'll look back and I'll look at what I do every day and even the results of it, both physical and mental. I'm blown away by who I am now compared to who I was 10 years ago. The self-love is different. Are we able to control that as much as we can control the actions of self-care?
So self-love is the feeling. Self-care is the action that comes from that feeling.
But how do you create
the
feeling?
They're correlated. So when you have self-love, self-care happens on its own, and so that's the root of it. How can we get to a place where you can love yourself more? And I'm going to say it, you've got to love yourself more than your business. You've got to love yourself more than your content creation. And it's going to only elevate your content creation. It's only going to elevate everything that you do, but it all starts with you. And that's what I'd recommend, is to think about, how are you doing with self-love? How can you increase that? And just look at what happens once you connect with it. You'll see that the outflow will be exponentially more. And I've got a concept for you that I wanted to bring up.
So tell me before I go
One of them is, this is only one, and I've been talking to people about this. I think I talked to Matt about it, but the concept of it, what's enough? You can go past enough. So the enough might be, I want 100,000 followers, 1 million followers.
I love what you just did. Sorry, I have to interrupt. I apologize. I love what you just did. I love that you provided the context and you said it in terms of followers and not in terms of money, because I think that if this wasn't like a creator-centric...
It could be money.
But it's everything, right? People have these vanity metrics.
It's a concept of enough. And you're allowed, all of us are probably going to go way past enough. But if you don't know what enough is, you're constantly going to be chasing an ideal, and that ideal is going to be running away from you. You're never going to catch it. So you have to have a line in the sand that this is enough. If I have this much money, this much followers, this much love, like right now, I definitely surpassed enough. Like I have passed enough. I have a great house. I have amazing kids.
Yeah.
I have amazing people I work with. I have amazing friends. I've surpassed enough. But knowing that I've passed enough is really, really important, because anything I do is just extra now. And that's where the fun begins. If you're constantly just going without having a sense of what enough is, you're never going to be fulfilled.
No.
So I think for content creators, it's a very important concept.
It is a very important concept. You know, I talk to creators who get so bent out of shape over the vanity metrics that they lose sight of, like, it completely destroys them. People, and this is probably this. I don't think this is a phenomenon maybe that you're witnessing, because the essentially the creators you work with are at such massive scale that they may not be feelings, but they did at some point. Is that creators at varying scales, they tie their self-worth into the most ridiculous thing, which is the metrics around their content on a daily basis.
Yes.
You can measure, like, their mood is controlled by that, and you know, I try to explain to them that there's so many factors outside of your control. For you to have this, like, it makes no sense.
Yes.
But it's hard. You know, on the topic of enough, I've had, just to share with you as a friend, like, I've had such profound, changes in my life. Like, for me, moving to the United States, I can't even describe it to you. Like, I can't. Like, you know, you and I were both immigrants.
Right.
And we were both refugees, by the way. You mentioned that I was a refugee too from Ukraine.
We have so many parallels. Yeah.
Yes. I was. We left Ukraine when I was 2.5 years old. Jewish refugees from the Soviet Union. It was a time when they were only letting Jewish people out.
Yes.
And in the 70s. And so kind of, you know, I carried that trauma with me, my family trauma. And then moving here, and of course, just, this is such a land of opportunity. And I guess I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I just want to say, you know, on this topic of enough, for me, I have so much, like, you know, I got the girl, right? The proverbial, like, perfect girl, as far as I'm concerned. Beautiful children, friends.
Yes.
You know, I'm not broke. I do okay. We've got a home. We've got it. It's almost like overwhelming to me.
Yes.
And I'm trying to process that where I started and where I grew up is just so profoundly different that sometimes I get imposter syndrome, like, I shouldn't be here. I don't deserve this. Anyways, I don't know. I kind of went on a tangent there, but what you said resonated with me about this enough thing. But I just wanted to go back to a couple of quick things. So we've talked about sleep, super, super important. Is there anything that you want to say about exercise and nutrition that, I mean, it's a topic that's talked about a lot. I just feel there's so many charlatans around these topics. I want to hear from you.
I mean, and it's another thing that really depends on what your health goals are. You know, the reason that there's so many different opinions about exercise and what foods you should eat is that every person's a little bit different. And there's going to be no one diet or one protocoled exercise regime that's going to be right for every single person on the planet. And that's why there's never been like a consensus statement of, like, this is what everyone should eat and this is exactly how everyone should exercise. But I think that, you know, exercise regularly for so many reasons, whether it's endorphins, whether it's preservation of muscle mass, it improves your sleep. It's really sort of like the fountain of youth that we have control over is exercise and movement. And, you know, and food is medicine. So, you know, what you put in, you know, again, I said every small decision you make is sort of like a micro contract with your DNA, right? So if I'm eating food, whether, you know, I'm choosing between a healthy meal that I made at home or eating fast food, they both energetically have different vibrational states. You know that food that's nutritious and nutritionally dense is going to be better for you over time. Doesn't mean, listen, I have a rule that if I'm at an airport, fast food is allowed. Not that I always take advantage of it, but that's my, you know, sort of one fit pass. But most of the time I eat healthy. So I think, you know, people have been sort of inundated with food and exercise, so I'm not going to belabor sort of talking about those things. But I think just having some sort of approach towards regular physical activity, let's say 3 or 4 times a week, and for the most part, eating healthy and eating things that are not processed, don't have food additives, don't have food coloring, that are nutritionally dense, is a really, really important part of taking care of your body.
You know, I want to add to that, where I I appreciate your kindness when saying that there's a lot of different advice when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to like nutrition and exercise, because everyone is different. And so there's all these different solutions. I'm a little more skeptical. I think there's a lot of different advice because there are different ways that people can, that the providers of this information are trying to figure out on how to monetize on it. So I'm a little more skeptical. So,
I mean, there's certain prevailing things that are true. You know, like Mediterranean type diets are great.
Right.
Fiber seems to be important across the board in terms of
protein. Everyone's talking
you know,
protein.
making sure that you're taking enough protein, especially now with all these GLP-1s, so like Ozempic and Mounjaro and all these weight loss drugs. A lot of people are losing a lot of muscle mass.
What do you think about these shortcuts?
I think they can be dangerous when not used appropriately, and they can be fantastic when used appropriately.
Really? They can be. They can be.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, they can be really good for the right patient. And you know, my biggest concern with these GLP-1 receptor agonists, this class of medicine, is that up to 30 to 40% of all the weight loss is actually muscle loss.
That's the problem.
And we know muscle is king. Muscle is king for longevity. Muscle is king for metabolism. As you get older, your muscle sort of dictates how well you balance yourself. So patients who have less muscle are higher falls risk. So people might be doing these GLP-1s for a long time, and then they'll find themselves being a very frail 70-year-old. That's not a really great trade-off in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're taking the GLP-1s, you better be...
GLP-1 is like an Ozempic, right?
Ozempic,
is that what
Mounjaro,
it is? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That class of medicine. You better be, you know, working on your big muscle groups. You better be eating enough protein to maintain your muscle mass. And you may even ask your doctor to track your muscle mass over time to make sure you're not losing. And there's easy ways that we can do that, you know, in the office.
Well, I've prioritized muscle development. Like
I think muscle is so important.
So important.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because I don't know if I told you this when you were at our house, but like I was diagnosed about 10 years ago with arthritis in both of my knees.
Okay.
It's probably still there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think a lot of people, I was in my early 40s, and I think a lot of people would have given up. They would have been like, that's it. And I mean, what I said was, I spoke to a trainer, a guy who was 20 years younger than me. And he's like, you have nothing to worry about. I said, what do you mean? It felt like I was being stabbed in the knee with a knife every time I walked up a flight of stairs. And he said, we got to go heavy on weights, on legs, on everything. And I said, that's great. Anyway, we did it. Everything went away because apparently the natural brace that has been created around my joints is holding my knees together. I don't have any pain.
Yeah.
Furthermore, I did that, and then I had a trainer here that had me doing crazy box jumps and all this stuff. And I said to him, I go, there's no need for this. I can get cardio without this high impact stuff. He goes, no, we need it. And I did it, and I tore my meniscus.
Right.
I went to my doctor. He said, you have to have surgery. I said, I'm not doing surgery. I went to a physiotherapist. I keep working my legs.
Yes.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
So I really believe in muscle development for longevity.
It's so important.
Yeah. So I wanna tell all the creators, please lift weights.
Lift weights, especially like your lower extremity weights. Your biggest muscle groups are going to be your legs, your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings. It's going to be super important, you know, for when you get older. Muscle mass preservation is going to be a really, really hot topic.
You know, for men though, doing legs, it's not sexy. Like it's when I do upper body and I get that pump, like just like I feel good.
Well, I'll tell the men, if you do legs, you're going to boost your testosterone.
Right.
So that's going to be like a little, you know, carrot that I can dangle.
Before we conclude, I want to talk about something that may be a little, not I want to say risque, but I do want to approach it maybe from my own kind of personal. You think you already know where this is going. I want to talk about sex.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the benefits to overall health, but I really want you to bring in the spiritual and the creative side of it. Mm-hmm. Tell me about what are we doing with what's like the consensus today? What's going on? Because is sex something that we in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, whether men or women, should we be doing this as much as possible? How is this contributing to our overall health? What are the health benefits of regular sex?
So, I mean, sex is a way to, there's it's a fun activity.
Sure.
It's a spiritual activity. It's a connecting activity. Oxytocin and different hormones get released during sex. And I think that when I think of someone who's healthy, I think about a couple of things. I think about spiritual health and spiritual connection. There's mental health and mental connection. There's physical.
Mm-hmm.
And physical can be broken up into like, what we do at the gym as well as sort of sexual activity. And I think that it's a very important part of feeling vital and connected.
So it's an overall good. Is there such a thing? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you don't seem to be a person who'll get embarrassed easily. But like, is there such a thing as like too much sex?
I don't think so. I mean, if a couple's feeling it and they have that's the vibe.
Yeah.
And you're connecting, you're both into it, and it's great. It's a great thing to do.
I feel it keeps people young.
Yeah.
That and riding motorcycles, but I don't recommend riding motorcycles.
How about having sex on the motorcycle?
That might be tricky and illegal.
Okay.
So I want to stay out of jail, and I want to stay crash free on the motorcycle. Daniel, this has been so amazing. Thank you. I want to say that in my development as a host, I've only been doing it for maybe about 2 years now.
Yeah.
And inconsistently. Now, like the last 6 months has been the most consistent I've been with Creator Method. Before I was doing it as a hobbyist. I am proud of myself for being able to get to the point where someone like yourself with your level of knowledge and expertise would actually come onto the podcast. So thank you.
It's such an honor to be here. And honestly, any reason or excuse to spend time with you, I'll say it over and over and over again. Best. I love spending time with you and your family.
And we're having dinner tonight. We're scheduled
dinner
to have dinner
tonight,
yes.
and play date with the kids on Saturday.
I love it. Daniel, thank you so much. The only thing I just want to get one commitment from you.
Yes.
Just two commitments.
Okay.
First of all, will you come back for a part 2 once I do more research and there's more stuff to talk about?
100%.
Okay, so hopefully we can make it a regular thing. The other thing I wanted to ask is I would love to, for the Creator Method community, just for the members only, to do, and I think we talked about this, like a private Zoom call where we invite, our 400 members.
Questions and answers.
Just Q&A about like everything that just to really,
Absolutely.
pick your brain. Daniel, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And let's go for dinner.
This was so fun. Yeah, let's do it.
Absolutely.